So, hi everyone. To some extent, I might be the worst nightmares of any of you who are developing code and hope to give that to the industry someday. In a sense that I am your end user, meaning I'm the guys that down the road you will have given your tool to a software company, and someday you're not here in the room and you have to hope that I get the best out of it. That day, it's not going to be how brilliant mathematically your code is that will make it that, yes, I can convince my manager and above to trust the results. It's going to be a lot more, hey, what can I do with it? And a lot of human psychological aspects. As such, I thought that for 2 days like this one, where it's a lot about mathematics and how it will change the world, unfortunately, it's also needed to bring back the human factor that will never disappear from your equation. And that's what I want to try to cover. Of course, in a simple way. More specifically, where do I work? I work in oil and gas, meaning that my world of geomodeling is a few square kilometers with a few vertical wells. At the vertical wells, yes, I have a lot of data. What Tom was showing could be perfectly applied on the core data and so on that I work with. Seismic cube can also be automatically analyzed, yes. But then you're back to one well here, the next one 10 kilometers away. In between, you have nothing, meaning that we are still in an extremely under-sampled system. Because of that, at this point, again, I'm the bad guy here, I do not see AI technique as being the big game changer in that type of questions. But I do perfectly see them as being the next good thing in my toolbox that, as such, also will be someday replaced or new tools will come later that we have not thought about yet. And also it means that whatever I have seen in terms of how people use, let's say, geostatistics, in terms, again, the human factor there, I believe can be applied also tomorrow to your algorithms when they will fall in my hands or someone even worse than me with softwares. And as such, I came up with 4 rules, 4 ideas that I'm going to bring up in the limited time that I got. Number 1 will be to discuss briefly about, I think, different type of users that I think you should keep in mind when, again, you develop your tools. Secondly, what I'm just calling the iceberg effect. You'll see when I get to that. Third point is that I do not believe that a given tool is able to judge if its results are actually useful or not. And I will actually get back to Tom's presentation when I go to that. And at last, integration, where we'll integrate when we get there. Oh, there might be a few jokes here or there that I will not skip, of course. So let's start with the first one. So my friend Jim had a very simple geomodel to make, like what you see here. Few vertical wells, he just needed to make these 2 geological units, nothing fancy. He needed to start by building these 3 surfaces representing them, but then he called me panic because, he got that result. So more specifically, the ones that surface he built like that suddenly crossed again here, and he was really puzzled with this. So I asked him, but you expected the geologist? No, the surface does not exist that well. So for me, being a pragmatic, I just told him, you know what, you just messed up your setup, let's just change it. He was using least square interpolation. I was convinced that this was just a problem of having no data in that part here from here to there, and the algorithm just converged to a solution that was just mathematically wrong, just move on. Then he stopped me. Yeah, but what if it was geological, actually, what I am seeing here, which puzzled me even more. But then, and that's why I took that example here, he told me this. He told me, look, Thomas, I gave those point sets, the same point set, I come up with an interpretation, the interpretation of the West, that will come up with something different. As if he had given that actually to another geologist in the room and so on, who came up with something, again, geological. My point with this is that this type of personalities, you're going to face some people that are convinced that the software does speak to them. That brings me to the 3 types of people that I have in mind for now. And you might spot my first joke on this slide. Number 1, a lot of people that will access your software are what I'm calling yes men. I do not mean it in a negative term. I have known brilliant people that are stuck in companies in which workflows has been set up by people before them, and they are not allowed to change anything. So those guys, unfortunately, will not be even allowed to touch your tool. You need to find the people in power above them or so on, who you have to convince, maybe falling into the next 2 categories. I am the handyman. I do not talk to my tools are here to work for me. Then you have the third category, which for me are the dangerous kind. Those that are with goodwill, brilliant people again, but that misinterpret what a software or mathematical equation give as being science, geoscience, while in fact it could be something else. And you should be careful with those. Not again because they are silly or so on, they are not. It's just that they have not necessarily the correct approach linked to that. And that takes me directly to this, oh, I forgot. The only one that should be allowed to talk to his hammer is, by the way, Thor, if you want to remember something from my presentation. So, let's go with my second lesson, what I'm calling the iceberg effect. And I'm actually going to take you here saying that you may be making that mistake yourself. So let's think a geologist will give you a few data points, interpolate, and then you think, and I've heard it I think today already often, oh, give that to 10 geologists and you have 10 different interpretations. Yes, but what we very often forget as programmers and so on is that even if you give only a few points to a geologist, he is in fact going to rely on a lot of knowledge that he or she acquired elsewhere. He is using that to compensate the fact his data set is very likely, again, undersampled compared to what he has to do. And yes, part of what he's using is geological, sequence stratigraphy, you name it, whatever. Part of it is pure luck, because at some point, he still needs to make a drawing because he has a geomodeler on his back asking for an input to make a geomodel to give to the engineer. But again, do not assume you as programmers that you have only the point at the wells, that you use interpolation techniques. And the geologist will do things and mistakes I've made myself. Oh, I don't need your interpretation. My interpolator will do it nice instead of you. And no, because we will do it, incorporate much more things. If I can rely a little to what you were saying, Guillaume, when you were talking briefly about stratigraphy connecting wells, and you said, oh, we make an assumption of the direction of deposition, that can be a way to explicit some things that a geologist will do naturally. But, and I go back to my friend Jim, he was making the same mistake concerning algorithms. For him, he thought algorithms behave like human beings. He doesn't realize that an algorithm has its own limitations, its own shortcomings, can create specific artifacts, whatever, and doesn't behave like a human being. Also, he might not realize that the algorithm can do much more than what he's using it for. Yes, but for you as a developer, you should try to also explicit as much as possible the different weird behavior or whatever that you have done, and not just give a tool that is a marketing brochure to future users. Otherwise, you could corner yourself as being just a weird software, weird tool that is not relevant at the end of the day. Rule number 3, a tool cannot judge its own results. And here I will just remind as my starting point, so creating algorithm respects the mean of the input data, if you have no weird secondary variable or whatever. An algorithm like SGS, sequential Gaussian simulation, will respect the shape of the histogram. That's the base. So far, so good. Where I'm puzzled is when I see the number of papers that have been published in which you have that following logic. I have run SGS, look at my plot showing that my histogram of my results in matching my input. As such, my model is correct. Okay? I see some of you smiling because, oh, maybe you're the one who wrote that paper I'm criticizing, and that's okay, I don't need name, we can talk later with a beer. Or you have seen that, and that puzzles you. But yet, look around at the number of papers that are being published with that angle, and you're going to find that a lot. Remember, I think it was you presenting something about automatically extracting information from papers. I'd love to see that apply for those type of problematics. But my point, of course, for those who don't see what I'm referring to, is that it's not because all that you prove, in my opinion, is that the algorithm has been incorporated in the software without a bug. It's like you are proving it's behaving as it's supposed to behave. But in my example here, are you sure that you have optimized your variable? Are you sure you should not have model facies? Are you sure of many other aspects that maybe you should still have run the SGS, but set up completely different? And still it would have matched, but maybe in a different way, the histogram. And maybe, in fact, you were not even supposed to match it. After all, if you're undersampled, maybe you should not even trust that histogram to start with. Okay? And when I was making the connection with what Tom was showing earlier, is that there's many things I like in your presentation, Tom, and not just because I'm a Thomas, you're a Tom, obviously. Yeah. Don't blame your parents for who are not named Toms. It's too late in all cases, but if you have kids, they will like you. If you anyhow, I only have 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Is that in what he was describing, that was completely different because he was coming up with results on his XRF data, and then he was comparing with the core data themselves to see if there was a logic there. It's not the tool that tell it if it's right or wrong. Again, no one is supposed to listen to the hammer unless his name is Thor, not even a Thomas. Okay? But I insist, you would be surprised at the number of persons who make that mistakes. Not necessarily people in that room. I'm talking real human beings without your knowledge of softwares and so on and algorithms. The last thing that I want to take is, I'm taking here a small subsample of an area in Manitoba, Canada, lovely place, I'm sure, where we have about 1,000 wells. Oh, and by the way, for you who love data, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, we have large databases of well data that are more or less public. So there's probably a lot of things you could grab from there if you need data set to test something on wells. That being said, just looking at a few areas here of 7 kilometers, I'm looking at the log of gamma ray of those 10 wells. Just to spot that the gamma ray, if you follow the shape of it from well to well, is extremely the same from well to well. There's some geology there that is laterally quite continuous. So I'm going to make just a geomodel just for that small section that you see here, sorry. If I zoom in again, you do see here the kind of cycle I was talking about. Low gamma ray at the top could be some sand. We have some higher gamma ray here, could be some shell. We have something in between below, but it looks pretty easy, laterally continuous, nice and easy. So making a simple 3D grid, the mesh is proportional, meaning that I asked, I think, for 50 layers, but the thickness changes a little all over the place, and that's why the thickness that you see represented there is not the same everywhere. And if I represent my horizontal variogram, it looks like this on the right. Nothing fancy, I mean, in geomodeling, why would you expect an horizontal variogram to work on well data? It never works, so just move on. Yeah, but in my case, is it really good? Here is what I mean. If I were to take the well on the left and just propagate it everywhere to have a true layer cake, which seems to be kind of what I have, I should have something like this, with a variogram shows looking like that, which makes sense because variograms, the dots are at the bottom because if I am here on that layer, I have 20 gamma ray 20, I see 20 all the way through for kilometers. Infinite variogram, that is correct. So when I got something like that instead, maybe a little far off. So should I run away just with the results of the variogram? Well, if you start to look, or I will skip because of time, but the thing I wanted to conclude with that, and I will go through that faster, is simply to say that even in a situation like that with so many wells, the true good model could be the place where you don't just rely on one tool, variogram, SGS, whatever, but you take the time also to rework your gridding because you want to maybe to spot that if that spikes here of high gamma ray is the same across, then maybe it needs to be in the same layer to have a chance to propagate correctly by the geostat. We are combining different tools that were written by different teams 20 years apart, and yet they need to work together. But on top of that, none of it would work if I didn't have a geologist able to look at it in details to tell me exactly what should go with what everywhere. That is my user. My point for this lesson, integration and so on, is whatever tool you develop will have to cohabitate. Can I have some help on that one? Cohabitate. You see, integration work. That was done on purpose. So, yes, you need that your tool are able to communicate with other tools as well as the user. So, and I will make a conclusion after my joke. Yes, you are all gods in that room, okay? Meaning you are able to develop tools that none of us normal human beings are able to do, no problem at all. But you need to keep in mind that is going to be used by mere mortals at the end. So, put your ego aside. Do not assume that, of course, you are going to replace the geologist. Let me tell you a secret, you won't. assumes that he's going to, or she's going to mess up, but that what you absolutely need, in my opinion, and for me that's the only possible danger with, and I just need 1 minute and I'm good. That's the real possible danger I see personally, and I'm ready to be proven wrong, with AI, is that idea that it's a kind of true black box where you just get the results and you have to live with it. If whatever you develop has a tendency to look that way for a final user, in my opinion, that specific tool is a dead end. Because at the end of the day, if I am called to court someday, because my model was wrong, my company messed up and now is suing me, and my only answer is, well, it just gave me what it gave me, huh? But I can call it down because it was his code done 15 years ago. Do you think it's going to fly? No. Okay? So again, and that would be my last advice, if you work in a team that you feel is theoretical, continue. Sure, you can make a career with it. But try to get in touch with people from whatever industry you try to be involved in. Because I'm sure that they're going to describe you real situations that are going to surprise you compared to the ideal world of the university, wherever, where you're actually working. And when you do that, your final product for the world might be much better as a packaging than if you don't. Okay.
Thank you for a very entertaining talk. Any questions? Maybe something about the benefits of being a Thomas, more benefits? But any questions from the floor?
Given that you're a Thomas,
Yes.
do you think that a presentation about geostatistics that does not present the variogram should be heavily doubted, doubting Thomas, by those listening?
What do you mean by presenting? Like giving the definition?
If I'm talking about geostatistics and I'm showing you a grid map and all that, should it be a rule that I must show the variogram that supported my crigging?
Which for my presentation or as a more general?
A more general rule for doubting Thomases like me.
Yes and no. My concern with that is that you could easily hide yourself behind the fact that you show variogram to just justify that, of course, it's correct. Meaning that it's not because you have a variogram, an experimental one, where the dots align and you have a match, that is again enough to say that what you do makes sense. But it should be part of the definition, yes. Yes, because you are correct, and that's true from at least the software I use, maybe you recognize from the interface, I won't say name, but you can have some software that give you all of some input set up on how to calculate variogram that is always wrong, and if you don't change it, you have stupid results. And at least you cannot hide it if you don't, if you should. Yes, so yes, I will show variogram, but I will not stop there to justify my model to a larger audience.
Keep you beyond that.
Yes, because
That's fine.
this way, and that will connect to what the lady over there, sorry, I don't know your name, but behind you, Guillaume, you were asking how to validate a model. In my world, in fact, it's about sending back the hot potato where it should be sent, the geologist. In my opinion, a geomodel is a physical representation of the vision of the team about the reservoir. It means if the team has no vision and rely on variogram to make it for them, then they don't even have a tool to validate. So you can already move to another team, it's a dead end where you work. But it means also that a model is valid if it represents your vision with its uncertainties. And after, maybe your vision is wrong, but then we will be wrong together. And then it's sending to simulation, as Guillaume was saying and shown by Vasily, that you can after test it against real data and so on and so on.
Variogram is a first pass, obviously, right? If it doesn't match, then basically that should be alarms and whistles there.
Yes.
Also, I was going to mention the residuals variogram. That's often also a good quality pass when you basically see if your model recovered all the correlation or there's some left. So basically, if it's pure nugget in the residuals, then you say, okay, I've recovered most correlation.
For me, the key message I could give also is that, for me, something that always puzzles me with geomodeling. A lot of geomodels are meant to be used on some form of flow simulation. Either it's for oil and gas, or it's for CO2, or hydrogeology, whatever. But that means size of the geobody, what are the barriers, connectivities. And yet, statistics is about volume statistics. Statistics don't tell you anything if you have connected that cell to that cell, yes or no. So there is a huge weakness at relying purely on geostatistical results as a way to validate.
Higher order statistics would give multi-point moments the commutativity.
Sorry.
The high order statistics beyond 2-point variograms will quantify the commutativity between
Fair enough. That can be part of how to work with that. But it's true, and you tell me from your experience on the industry, many companies don't even analyze the model based on its connectivity, purely in terms of did you measure statistics or not. Move on. Am I fair to say?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise,
Yes, we have. So we got the poster, the lightning talk. Yeah. So yeah, before yeah. So thank you very much for some.